What's this feature to save? Got 2 viewers. What's this feature to save? Got 2 viewers. So let's see. All right, folks, let's see. Switch to chat mode. I'm going to try to share my screen. All right, folks, let's see. I'm going to try to share my screen. I'm not sure what that loud squeaky noise is. I promise my room is not filled with mice. All right. So here's the example resume we built in class yesterday. And this actually is pretty responsive. But what I'm going to do is, let's see, fix the style sheet and just get rid of everything I've got in the media query. And we can build it again. All right. Seriously, that squeaky noise is nuts. I'm gonna try muting. All right, so me muting doesn't help. For y'all that are watching, I think there are 4 of you. Oh, it just stopped. Okay, great. Oh, it started up again. Anyways, if you're watching this, can you turn off your volume? I think there are 4 of you. Oh, it just stopped. Okay, great. So here's the example project we did in class. The wrapper has a width of 960. The header has a width of 960. We've got a float to the right. And let's see. We have a width on contact. I don't know if that'll be an issue. This will be an issue. We've got padding top. Remember, that was to push our content down from the fixed header. The real problem I think we're going to have with making this responsive, or to rephrase that, the problem that people had last year was stuff like this. We set up these dates, and each one of the dates has a different, in our case, margin left. Sometimes, well, as we discussed in class, we could have done that with the margin right on something else, but this is how we did it. So basically, my recommendation for making things responsive, my first recommendation is to look for anything in your CSS that has pixel values in it. That's what I was going through and doing. So I noted the width 960 here. I also want to point out we have padding on our wrapper, or specifically on the paragraphs H1, H2, and H3 tags in our wrapper. Of 24 pixels, that's on the left and right, so that might be substantial. Again, our header has a width. Other than pixel values, you want to keep an eye out for floats. General rule is anything you set a pixel width for, you may have to fix that or remove or overwrite that in your media query. And any floats you have, you probably want to turn off. So the way I would do something like this is work from the top down. And what I mean by that is I would start with my first rule that I'm concerned about, which would be this one on the wrapper with that width. So I'm going to start there in my media query. Maybe I should make it clear. I think most of you know this, but I did see a couple of examples where people ran into problems with it. In the last project, your media query does have to happen all the way at the bottom of your CSS file. One reason that students sometimes run into problems with their media query is, well, as we've talked about, if you have any errors in your CSS, it turns off or negates everything below it. So for instance, if I forgot the closing bracket for this rule, it's not going to read my media query, probably. So keep that in mind. Anyways, again, I'm going to overwrite rules. So I know I have a rule for the width on wrapper. I know I have a rule for the width on header. We'll just start like this. Let's see. That's probably a pretty good start. Now, we talked about in class how if you, for desktop, we have to pick a pixel value. We don't have to, but it's the best way to work. So pick a pixel value and say, like we did before, 960 pixels. When you're on mobile, you cannot predict the size of someone's screen. The variability of screen sizes on mobile is insane. So we changed to a percentage. So I want to remind everyone that the box model combines width with padding, margin, and border to create what I've called in class a calculated width. And all that means to y'all is, I don't know why I'm not trying to hit that button. There we go. I'll make this a comment. What that means is right now, my page, if I set it to a width of 100% in the media query, that would be 100% plus 24 pixels padding on the left plus 24 pixels padding on the right. That means it's going to equal something more than 100%. Like I'm making this number up, but let's say 103% or something. So what does that mean for your end user? Well, what that really means is that the page, when we're under 960 pixels, your page is always going to have a horizontal scroll bar. And we don't want that. So the easiest solution, the one we discussed in class, is to bring this number down. We bring it down to something in the mid to low 90s. I'll just set mine to 90% for now. One thing I failed to mention in class, which I think is relevant and important, is that the visual difference between a width of 90% and a width of 100% is almost impossible to recognize. I mean, I don't think y'all would be able to tell that difference. I was hoping to show you my results right now. I might have to switch to something else. Whoa, that's funky. So let me go screen share, and I'm going to try to share. Here we go. There we go. Yeah. So here is my resume that I'm working on right now. Again, the only rules I've adjusted are for the wrapper and for the header. And I've set both of them to a width of 90%, I think. So when we shrink down, once we get smaller than this wrapper, which we can see the edges of right there, you can see my page really dramatically changes its formatting, which is good. But you can see it's also a little bit screwed up. Let's see, let me make sure I get down to the right size. It's too big. Let me get down to, all right, so let's say that's okay. You can see that the header is doing an okay job, if so it seems, and the wrapper is doing an okay job. But as a reminder, I'm not going to test your page for responsiveness just under 960 pixels. What I'm going to do is take Google Chrome and make it as small as I can. I'll make it this small. And that's how I'm going to view your content. So looking at this one, I can see that the header works, but this area is a little visually busy, and I think I want to adjust it. I'll just require turning that float off. I'm not too worried about it yet. Let's see, if we scroll down below that, it seems like lots of things worked pretty well. I'm actually kind of surprised at how well these work. Like, this is still saying graduate. Why is that happening, actually? Let me refresh. There we go, now it's broken. I think it hadn't taken my CSS. So now we can see that it's not quite as beautiful as we thought. Let's switch back to our code and see if we can fix some of this. But before we do, let me just point out the wrapper looks good. That's at 90% wrapper, so you can see there's the edge of it on one side, there's the edge on the other, it's working. The header is terrible. Look, the header, first of all, the header doesn't scroll because it's fixed. And second of all, everything's cut off, right? A couple other things to note. Our dates here are just like non-existent. If you scroll over, here they are. We've got line height issues in this first one, in this like education or school div, whatever we called it. So that's the remaining stuff to fix. Again, going top down, I'm going to start with the header. So I'm going to switch back to brackets now. Let's see. Let me confirm that, yeah, I need to switch my screen share. Excuse me. Looks like I'm going to have this cough throughout our entire winter term. Okay, so the wrapper I set to a width of 90%. I'll go ahead and set the header to a width of 90% as well. I want my header to look the same as my wrapper, so that seems to make sense. As a reminder, our header has a fixed position. We can keep that on mobile. We could also change it back to like normal, I guess, where it would scroll. Before we get to that, though, let's worry about the content of the header. Remember I was saying we have this right here, me, hashtag me float right, or in other words, a div with the ID me, or an image float right. It is never a bad idea to turn off all your floats on mobile. Let's see, I'll say float none. Reminder, we can float left, right, or none. I know I've said this in class 3 times, but on yesterday I saw a couple of students that wrote float center. It's never going to work. All right, so I set that to float none. I want to see what that looks like. So let's see, I'll switch out a screen share, I think. Switch back to here. It's not quite as smooth as in class, huh? All right, so you can see that our header is fitting now, as we set it to 90%. In fact, it fits just inside the wrapper. That's great. Also wanted to point out that the float is turned off, but now you can see everything is just left justified. And that's not the end of the world, but I would like to center it all. I think it would look better. All right, so switch back to the code again. Okay. Let's see. Okay, we're back to the code. So here's header. In header, which contains the H1 tag, the H2 tag, and the image that I'd like to center, I'm just going to say text align center. I know this is a little counterintuitive, but this rule also centers images, even though it's text align. All right, let's see if that worked. Let's see. Yeah, geez, that's a lot better. So here's my new header. Looks very good. You can see that my content is now like cut off here, right? It's just say education right here. And the reason it's getting cut off is now in mobile, the space I've allowed for the header to be fixed and have my stuff scroll underneath, it's actually not enough in mobile because it's just scrolling behind it. So in other words, I could increase this padding, which I think is padding top on main. Instead of doing that, I wonder where this email address went. Oh, there it is. It's in orange. So what I'm thinking is instead of adjusting this, I'm going to make it so this header is, its position is fixed, but then I want to change it so it's static. Let me do that real quick. So we got some new questions, which is great. So I'll stop babbling about this. Let's see. Let me go to code, share. So here's what we were talking about. The header, again, was position fixed. I want to overwrite that and make it static. And then we had on main, we had a padding top that was making room for the fixed header. We don't need that anymore. I'll just set it to 24 pixels. We don't need it. We don't need to eliminate it completely. Okay, and then I noticed the line height is all screwed up. So that was in, what did we say line height? Let's see. School, line height 2. So I'll change that. School, line height, and let's see, inherit or normal. Either one of those will probably be fine. I just want it to not be set to 2 pixels, which is what we had it to before. Okay, so in the interest of kind of moving along a little quicker, because we've got more questions that are good questions that I want to talk about, let me just finish talking about the responsive aspect of this. I'm not going to stop talking about responsiveness since that's probably the hardest part of this project, but I do want to just address the part that would trip you all up the most. So again, dot date has a margin left. Dot date 2 has a margin left. Dot date 3 has a margin left. They all have different values for margin left. I don't care what their value is. But I'm going to say, I'm going to group all of those in my media query and say dot date 2, dot date 3. These are all comma separated. And then create my brackets and say margin left 0. All right, so one last time, let's find out how things are going. You get to see my mug one more time before I pop in that other screen. So let's see, here it is. All right. Well, I'm noticing one error that I did. I set the width of the header to 90%, and I think it should be 100%, and that should fill it to this edge. So now that I'm seeing that, I'll adjust it. You can see that our padding top fix has worked, and you can see that our margin left fix has worked. You can also see that this page is now actually responsive. So again, I would fix that, that one error. Which is header width, I'll set it to 100% in the media query. I remember we ran into some weird issues with making the header 100% width on desktop. All right, so following up on these questions I'm just getting, can we put our dates under our titles? Absolutely. You can format your resume however you want. I was showing y'all how to put your dates, to the right of your job titles, based on what most people's resumes look like and what they want them to look like. So to rephrase that, I want you to make your resume look like you want your resume to look. And if you want to do really well on this project, you will be very deliberate about how you want things to look. You will know what you want things to look like and where you want it to go. So that's kind of a roundabout answer, but it is okay to put your dates under your job titles or wherever it is you think would be appropriate, as long as it reads like a resume and looks good. Someone also asked, how do we put borders under our titles? Now, I'm guessing that's referring to like a job title. If it's not, then you could just kind of take the same logic and apply it to whatever it is you want to put a border under or a line under. Let's see. So I'm going to switch to the HTML here and find title. Okay, so P class equals title. I believe I was using this class title in terms of like job title. So there's one. Here's another, lab assistant and lead scientist. Okay, so those are our 3 titles. So to answer a question that, who asked this? Anne asked, let's see. This is pretty easy to do. Oh, Pratik asked this question, I'm sorry. Let me switch to style sheet. Okay, this is my normal CSS. You know, it's very easy to switch over to your CSS to, like, say, add something in the media query or whatever, and not know, like, am I in the media query or am I not? So make sure you're, you know, intentional about that. So right now I'm outside of the media query. This thing is set to display inline block. We actually already have a rule for this, so that's convenient. To add a border or a bottom border to your titles, you would just add this rule right here. Now I did it with a 1 pixel dashed gray. That would work. I'm going to change this to orange to make it very visibly clear. I'll actually increase it to 2 pixels as well. Again, I'm doing this to be extremely visible because, you know, I'm just doing screen shares here. So it's not going to look perfect, you know. Okay, so now hopefully you can see what I did. There's the dashes underneath this title, and this one. And this one you can see it kind of fills the whole area. Now this looks a little weird in the media query. So in theory, we'd want to adjust that border in the media query. But if we go wider, it would look like this. Okay, so why is that dashed line looking like that? This one looks fine. Lab assistant looks great. Lead scientist, that one looks okay too. This one looks weird. The reason that one looks weird is because we adjusted the line height in there, in that div. So I think if we remove that rule for line height, it would fix that problem. I'll try to do that really quickly. Hello. You may hear my munchkins making noise outside my bedroom door, or office door, whatever you want to call it. So again, the reason this is looking funny is because it's set to display inline block. But we also have, well, actually, I'm not sure. My guess is that the line height is making this look funny, since it's only in that first one. So let me turn that rule off. Display inline block actually should work just fine. All right, switching back, let's take a look. Let me crush this. Yeah, okay. So that's basically what we wanted. If I wanted to move these dashes, this underline in, I could do that probably with a margin left or margin right. Or my guess is that this element already has some sort of padding or margin on it, which is pushing this content out. If you're wondering why this border is not extending the entire width of the screen, it's because this H2 tag is set to display inline block as opposed to display inline. All right. I have a student asking for the updated boilerplate, so let me go ahead and send that. I'm not going to share my screen on this one. There's not really much to see. But I want to go ahead and get it quickly. And actually, let me just open up this boilerplate and make sure it has everything that we need. It's just the student appropriately asked for the updated boilerplate, and this is not updated. All right, I've updated the HTML. I don't know if y'all can see this. It doesn't matter if you can. Actually, it kind of does. Let me make sure y'all can see this. Yeah, y'all are seeing something different. So let me change, once again, my shared screen and switch it to brackets. Okay, so here's brackets. I wanted to make sure of something. I wanted to make sure everybody has a couple of things in their start point or their end point or whatever in your resume project. Make sure things don't go wrong. One is, remember, 2 or 3 of you had issues with your character set, and there was just a typo in it. Our character set is UTF-8. So you might want to just check and make sure that's what you have. Here's the line that I added for the viewport. Now, I know everybody was in class, I think, when we added this, and it seemed to work okay. That is, I haven't heard back from anyone. but it's not working. But if you were to check your resume on your phone and it is not listening to your media query, I'd say there's a 99% chance it's because you are missing this meta tag. Okay, in the style sheet, as a reminder, I had added a couple of lines. One is margin 0 on the body. That is not required, but it does remove that default border. It's just kind of the trend now. Here's the more important one. If you ran into problems lacking this rule in your last project, you always want this rule in there. You never need to remove it, overwrite it, change it, anything. This is just saying that images won't get bigger than their containers. And that's it. Okay, so now that I've updated this boilerplate, whoa, that looks weird. Let me go ahead and share that. So here's that boilerplate. I am going to crunch it. Y'all, just so you know, if you ask me to share files or folders with you, I'm going to send you zip files. I haven't had anybody say that that's a problem. They work with both operating systems. The reason I do that is, well, for one thing, they're cross-platform, but also, let's see, but also, no one has problems with them, I guess. So that's kind of a good reason. All right, let's check. Yeah, okay, just seeing a follow-up comment. Yeah, job title. Okay, so hopefully that worked. I'm hoping, Pratik, that I answered your question with putting a border underneath that. So again, if your border looks weird when you put it on there, it doesn't look right, it extends further than you expected, or the problem I had is it was like in our text. That had to do with the line height I had, set the school div to. Borders, or border bottom in this case, should work just fine if your title, job title, is set to display block or display inline block. You will run into problems, that is, the border will probably not even show up if you just have it set to display inline. You know, along these same lines, I wanted to mention something that, well, that will help y'all. Let's see if I can get this screen share up again. We have an interesting delay. All right, here we go, screen share. It's definitely better to look at my code than to look at me. Let's see, let me make sure I have brackets up. All right, then let me switch back over, oops, to this. Choose this to share. So here's what I wanted to point out. When we were doing our jobs, we said like div class equals job. We'll close that. And then let's say our job was, let's say we worked at Acorn Cafe. I'm just going to write this stuff out. From September 2013 to present, and let's see. I'll say I am a, what do they do? Oh, I'm a barista at Acorn Cafe. Okay, I'm not going to bother with the little paragraph at the end. So I got three little things. What we did yesterday is we wrapped each one of these in a p tag. And of course, a p tag is a block level element, so we had to play with the p tag to make it do what we wanted. What I want to point out is an alternative to that. We could have also used spans. Everybody remember the span tag? Span is the tag that I taught y'all when we were talking about the difference between inline and block. And span is the generic inline tag. So it's basically like div, but it's inline. So I'm putting all of these in a span. And we would still need to give these classes. So I'd say class equals job title. I'm using camel case there, so note that the T is capital. Not required. Class equals, oh, okay. Let's say class equals job, and then class equals job title. And then class equals job dates. Somewhat explicit. I think that makes sense. It's a little weird that job is Acorn Cafe, but I think you can remember that. Let's look at what this does so far. Hey, we got 7 viewers here. I'm glad y'all are taking advantage of this. Again, I've never done anything like this, so as far as I know, it seems to be working well. I haven't had anyone comment like everything's screwed up or anything, so that's good. Hang on, let me switch over to brackets and make sure I've fired up live preview, and then I will share that screen. Yeah, okay. It's pretty minimalist, but that's what it looks like. So if we set everything to be a span instead of a p tag, it's all going to show up on the same line automatically. Now we still have to deal with spacing issues. So how am I going to deal with spacing issues here? Well, I'm going to do it in two different ways. Remember, this is in a div called job. I'm going to put a border on that, give a width to it. I'm going to put in some page breaks as well. So again, this is something that we didn't have time to do in class. But we have time. Well, I mean, I guess technically this is class, right? So maybe we do have time. So again, here's my CSS. I'm going to split my screen. Here, let me do it this way, vertical split. Voila. Some of you may have noticed there's an update to brackets. It will warn you when you launch the program. That update is great, but you don't have to bother updating it now considering your final project is due in 3 days. It might be a bad idea, actually. Okay, so the reason I wanted to bring up both my HTML and CSS is so y'all can see how I'm going to put these things together. So I'm going to say .job. Oh, you know what? I've got two things called job, so that's going to be an issue. So let's see. This is boring, but employer. So I've got div class equals job. That's wrapped around the whole job. Then a span with the class employer, a span with job title, and a span with job dates. So I'll say .job. This would be for the div that contains it. So first of all, border it. Yeah, so we got another question. That's good. I'll get to that in a second. So I'm going to put a border on this and give it a width, just because this isn't in a wrapper or container or anything right now. So I want to give it a width. You know, maybe we should do this a smart way, actually. So I'll just div ID equals wrapper. Y'all have done a great job understanding what a wrapper does and how it works, and no one has had very many issues with it other than with media queries. Let's see, width 960px, margin 0 auto. Oh, and border, of course, 1 pixel solid. Okay, so there's my wrapper. That shouldn't be a surprise. Here's job. I just put a border on it. So I'm just going to write these other things out. .employer. Again, I did these as classes because I'm going to have more than one job listed. .job title. Boom, boom, boom. And .job dates. Okay. Here's what I wanted to point out. Again, this is newish stuff. This is not necessary for completing a resume, but if you use spans instead of p tags, sometimes you still need to force your spans to go onto different lines. So the way we did this yesterday is we had, like, you know, in this case, employer on one line, but we had our job title and dates on the same line. So the problem that creates is how do we push, how do we do a carriage return right here, basically? How do we hit enter there in code? And the answer is we do BR. Let's see, BR equals break or enter. It's like hitting enter. Now it's a Acorn Cafe, and then there would be, you know, like a return, basically. Go to the next line, and then barista, and then these dates. Now, these two things are still going to be right next to each other. So I would still have to say in job dates. Let's see, margin. I'll do padding. Doesn't matter. I'll do margin. Left, I don't know, 180 pixels. That might be extreme. Okay, so we got our basic setup. Let me make sure everything is saved and saved. I will quickly try to share my other screen. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Google for letting us do this. Can you imagine what would we have done 10 years ago? I guess we would have just cried. We certainly wouldn't have done this. Okay, so you can see the results I was going for. This is on one line. These are on the same line. Now, obviously, there's a lot more to do here. I would want to adjust this a lot more. But the basic layout is there, and some of you may have find that easier than the way we did it in class. All right. All right, the question I just got from Anne has to do with underlines looking kind of messed up. You've got lots of like overlapping text. I don't fully understand the question, but I think I understand the problem because it's the problem that we saw. So let me see if I can switch back to brackets. And I wonder if I can just open that previous folder easily. Yeah, I was on boilerplate, so let me switch to example resume finished. So, and I'm guessing you're not the only person that's going to have this problem. It's pretty common. I threw in this line height rule in school, in the school div that we made. And I know a lot of you coded that along with me. And I can pretty much guarantee that that's causing that weird underline problem you have. If you have any text that's overlapping, then it's almost certainly as a result of a line height rule you've written in your CSS. What I would recommend is if adding a border makes that look really weird, turn off this line height rule. Just get rid of it. We can control margin. We can control basically line height, the perceived spaces between our lines of content in ways other than using line height. And one way would be padding and margins. You could use that instead. So what I mean is, if we go over to what we have in this school div, we have an H3 tag, and then we have, title, date, blah, blah, blah. If I remember right, we did not like how much this was spaced out. It was just a little too spaced out. It was making things a little too wide, basically. But everything has its own thing, like title, date, etc. So if you were really disturbed by the spacing there, you could do things like this. Now, again, this is like an idea. You can experiment with it. I'm not going to type in something that's going to definitely work for you. But let's say I said like margin top. Right now, the margin top is too big. So how would I make the margin top smaller? Well, you can actually make these things negative. So I could set a negative margin top on date, or on job, or on both, or whatever I needed. Now, I'm going to comment that out for right now, so y'all can see it. But yeah, I wouldn't worry about it. It may or may not help you. Okay, well, I see that Anne has figured it out. So that's good. Oops, I didn't mean to do that. I marked that as unread. I can't mark it as red. So that's fine. You know, a lot of the questions I'm answering for you guys, it'll be answered in the first 2 minutes of me starting. You'll be like, all right, I got it, move on. But I'm doing this long form. I'm gonna finish answering the question for sure, because I know a lot of other people are gonna be having the same problem. So let me show you all something else that's kind of cool. I have to once again change my screen sharing. So let me see if I can switch to, I gotta set this up a little bit. Hang on a second. We go to brackets and live preview this example resume, this John Smith guy. All right, that seems to be showing up. So I'm going to screen share on my browser, and the reason is I want to show everybody this tool. Now, I've shown you all this before, but I want to show it to you again because it's really pretty useful. I'm going to control click on a blank part of my page. What I mean is I'm not going to control click on an image. That brings up options for this image. But if I control click where I just do not have content, in Chrome, I get this menu. Now, the menu is going to be different in every browser, but what we're looking for is these last two things. We've done view page source. That'll just show you your HTML and what you see in brackets. That's not too helpful. Inspect is pretty awesome, though. Sometimes this is also called inspect element. Now, I should point out when you launch inspect or inspect element, it's going to stop, excuse me, I got no sleep last night. It's going to stop running live preview. Live preview will not be live updating. But it brings up this goofy looking thing. Let me try to make it a little smaller. This is the code that makes up my website. Now, you can see that there's a bunch of strange parameters in the HTML that we didn't add, but they all say data brackets ID. Just so you know, that's happening because we're working from live preview. That's how brackets generates a live preview. So do not worry about that, just ignore it. If Here's what I wanted to show you is if I go in here and click on any element, like I have my wrapper selected, it shows me all the CSS. If I wanted to just test things and see what they look like differently, I can turn things on and off. So here's if I turned on the padding, turned it off, on, off. Here's if I turned the width of the wrapper off. You can see now my page shows the full width of the screen. Let's see, that's back on. I can adjust the margin if I want, blah, blah, blah. Now the reason that's really useful is if I take this page and shrink it down to mobile size, I should see my media query kick in. So here's my original rules for wrapper right here. But right here is my new rule for wrapper, and you can see it's in a media query. And you can actually add more rules here. Well, first let me show you, you can adjust a rule. So if I wanted to see, like, I wonder if I can go up to 94% without a full bar. Well, I just set that to 94, and I'm on my page, and I'm trying to, that worked fine, actually. 94 worked just fine. But I can also, again, I can add rules if I wanted. Now here I am in the wrapper. So I could say wrapper padding 0, 40 pixels and see what that looks like. And that is going to make it so my page breaks, right? So maybe 0, 4 pixels. Is that going to work? Still got a little bit of a wiggle. So remember, you kind of have to make it set up in like an exchange here. Like as you increase things like padding, you have to bring your width down. Okay, I think I got this thing pretty good with that setting. You can click through absolutely anything in here and see the applied rules on it. And what I mean by that is, you know, if you think a rule is being applied, or it should be because you wrote it in your CSS, but when you look at it in the browser, you're not seeing that result. Well, chances are it's you have a typo somewhere or something went wrong. You haven't saved your work, but if you don't see it here, it's not being applied. So for instance, if you didn't see your media query rules here, there's something wrong. I don't know what, it kind of depends. Anyways, here's the ID school. You can see here's all the stuff I have for school. Here's the box model, if anybody cares. It also lists in your style sheet what lines these rules are in, so you can actually like go straight to them. That's where lines are useful. So again, this is a useful thing for playing around, testing your media query, testing your CSS, and also just experimenting. Like, what if I adjusted the padding or got rid of margin left here? We can see that breaks everything down here. Okay, so that's a cool little trick to be aware of. While I've got you all sharing this screen, I wanted to remind you in our class blog, it might require a little bit of scrolling, but I mentioned this thing that I got on here, which is called progress. This is just HTML and CSS. This isn't insane or anything. Let me see if I can open up that progress and show it to you. Yeah, it looks like I can. Let me see if I can drag this page into here. All right, so I'm hoping you all can see this. Let me just actually check. Yeah, you can. This looks nice, right? This is a good example of something I would consider visual, a visual resume. Now, as a reminder, this isn't required. Neither is a picture of yourself. I'm just encouraging you all to make your digital resumes as visual as possible. I think every one of you, when you look at this, you understand what's being indicated here. I am indicating that I'm very good at HTML. I'm less good at CSS, you know, I'm pretty good at Photoshop. So instead of just listing your skills on your resume, which a lot of people do, here's a way of indicating visually and with HTML and CSS how skilled you are in this stuff. So how do we make this? I'm just going to do view page source because, again, this isn't going to be too confusing for y'all, I don't think. But basically, I created a div, well, a bunch of divs, and each one of these divs just is the class, whatever color it is, right? So I've got div class equals yellow, purple, green, red. You can see the colors there as how they correspond. They also notice probably that each one of those divs is wrapped inside another div, and that div that wraps them is called meter box. So here's div class equals meter box. That's wrapping the div green, and I used meter box 4 times. So let's look at the style sheet and see what's happening here. Nothing. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, so here is dot red, dot yellow, dot green, dot purple. They all have the same height, and I added what's called a border radius. And what a border radius does is round the edge. So can you see how that's round right there? That's what it's doing. By the way, I apologize if you're getting like an audio delay when I was previewing my audio. Okay, so here is, that was me previewing my audio, and I just heard myself talking from like 8 seconds ago. So if there's a lag, that's not a big deal. If there's a lag that's separating the audio and the video, I apologize. Again, I've never done this before, and I don't really know how to fix that. I haven't really looked into it. I didn't expect it. Maybe I should just try talking like 10 seconds later than I would have. That would be kind of hard. Okay, well, to finish what I'm talking about on this skills thing, because it's pretty cool. So here are my little divs of color. And again, beyond that, I needed to adjust the widths of each one independently in the colors. So you can see I said, well, for red, yellow, green, blue, or red, yellow, green, and purple, I want them all at the same height and border radius. But for red, the background's red. For yellow, the background's yellow, etc., etc. You can see these each have different widths. Those correspond to how wide these skills are. So let's talk about the second half of this, the meter box. Well, first of all, this is set to display inline block, and the reason is that way it can show up like in the same line as Photoshop, HTML, stuff like that. Well, that's not as important, but more importantly, they all have the same width. All those meter boxes go to 460. They have the same height as my red, yellow, green, and purple. They have the same border radius. Other than that, they're centered, and this margin bottom just separates them visually. And they have a background of 333. Now, that's shorthand, right? Some of you may recognize that as hexadecimal code, but it's a little confusing because hexadecimal code, as we saw in class, has 6 digits. There's shorthand for that as well. So 333 is just short for 333333, which is gray, basically. It's a color gray. It's a dark gray. It's this color, gray. So that's how I assembled this. If you're looking at this and you're thinking, well, that's something I would be interested in using, well, good. Let me show you where you can find it. Right now, it's the second post on our blog, and it indicates where it can be found. It's on Quicksilver on the wall server in a folder called COM210, and then in a folder called Progress. So you can just grab that folder. If anyone is off campus, is unable or does not know how to use the VPN and would like that file, I can send it to you via email. I did not show you all these. Wow, are there only 3 example resumes? I used to have a dozen. I know I cut a lot out, but I didn't think I cut that many out. Yeah, well, clearly I did. I tried to show, good ones. I didn't show any bad ones, but they vary. This one's very simple. It's very similar to what we did in class. I didn't give y'all a chance to get like my feedback on this stuff. I just kind of showed them to you. But I think her font and color use is pretty solid. It's very easy to read and straightforward. But here's things that I'm less crazy about on it. These links are really unattractive when you hover over them. Like just that bright yellow. That does not really fit with this color scheme. It seems like that was something that happened kind of, I don't know, separate from when the color scheme was described or decided upon. Okay, along the same lines, I've never heard of Nortel Networks RTP, but I bet you $1,000 they have a website. This should be linked. Let's see. I do not think that Paula had. Oh, she does have a listing for education, and yeah, and these things are linked. All right, so that's a decent one. This one, I gotta be honest with y'all. This one is kind of unfair to show you because this is really nice, and this person identifies herself as a graphic designer. She made all of these graphics herself. She chose this color scheme. She designed this layout herself, and she got it all to work. This is, let's just say I'd be really impressed if anybody managed to do something this nice. Okay, that said, there are definitely things that you can take from it. Notice how she actually embedded 2 fonts. There's this font, which is more kind of personal or handwriting, and she used that for her social media as well. She also used that for her headings. But then there's this other font right here. It's thin, and that's used, again, pretty consistently in all of this subtext. So using two fonts, there's actually three fonts on here, but this is kind of just like a straight font. These are in the images. Excuse me. The other thing I wanted to mention is the color scheme. The background of this page, or the body, is set to black, but the wrapper is set to white, and the header is set to this color blue she's using. So that's a pretty smart way of kind of making it look like there's a page on top of a background. We talked about that briefly in class. If no questions pop up, I'll quickly cover that. It's very easy. But the color scheme beyond that, I want to say there are elements on this page that are colored, or that exist, that are certainly not necessary, but they're what makes this nice. Everybody see this really thin bar of like rainbow color going across? That's her entire color scheme. And it's like summed up in this little line. In fact, you can see that two sets of colors repeat, or let's see, 1, 2, 3, 6 of the colors repeat, 3 of them do not, and that actually corresponds to their relative usage in the page, which is pretty amazing. She has the same rainbow at the bottom, but it's much taller. I think that's a huge part of what makes this visually impressive. This is when I was mentioning everyone copied last semester. I think because it's just really straightforward and simple. These look like they might open, but they don't. They're just custom bullet points. If you see something that's like this and you're like, wow, how did she do that? Remember, you can view her source. There it is. That's how she did that. If you want to see the style sheet, just click on that in the source. There's her style sheet. But the biggest problem I had with this resume, and I might remove this from my blog soon, is students like just totally ripped it off. Don't plug your name in a circle in lowercase and stick it at the top in your header with a little pink line underneath and then social media icons that echo that, because someone already did that. Now again, you can do this as inspiration. Don't have it look exactly the same. And frankly, very few of us have a name, first and last, that's only 7 characters and will fit in a little circle like that. So part of this is just the benefit of what her name is. I think she's again using different fonts. Here, if I highlight these 3 lines, you can see an example of all 3. That almost is too much, but it makes sense. It works pretty well. She's, again, a very talented graphic designer, and I think that's why. So what I wanted to show you all that's, I don't want to say beyond the scope of this or anything, but we're seeing examples of it, and I wanted to talk about it, is how to make your header and your footer look like they're kind of outside of your page. That is, they're like the full width. So again, this might be interesting to you. I'm going to go to screen share and switch to, wow, you can tell I didn't dress to go to campus today. Let me go to brackets. There we go. I am clothed, don't worry, I'm not in my pajamas right now. All right, so let's see. Here's what I want to point out. I have a header that has all of this John Smith stuff in it, his contact info and blah, blah, blah. This is the thing we were playing around with, we made it fixed, and et cetera, et cetera. Well, as a reminder, it's the same width as our wrapper. It doesn't have to be, and here's how it would not be. If I cut my header out and I stuck it above the wrapper, it's outside of the wrapper. Here's my header. Here I'm going to collapse it. So here's the header, and then we start our wrapper. That's the first thing. Let me switch to the style sheet and go to header. And for width, I'm going to say 100%. And we can keep it position fixed. That's not really going to do anything good or bad. All right, let's see what this looks like. Okay, hopefully you're seeing that. So here is my header. You can see it's the full width of the screen, no matter how wide or thin I make this. That's how it's going to look until my header listens to the media query and kind of pops in like that. Let me go a little beyond this and say, what if we wanted to change the background of the body and not of our wrapper? Well, I mean, y'all probably can figure that out on your own, but We didn't talk about it, so we should. So again, my header is going the full width of the page. My wrapper is not, it's limited. Separate from that, see, I've got a background color on the body. That's that azure. And I don't have one in the wrapper. So what if I added background color? I'll do Bisque. Okay, let me save that and switch over and let's see what it did. Perhaps. Murph, Bergen. All right. I think it's safe to say that Bisque was not the best choice of color, but here's the back of my page, or the body tag. Here is the wrapper, and you can see it just looks different. I think this looks kind of weird with this header like this, so I'm going to switch back and change it. But one more time, I'm also going to set the background to be a dark gray and get rid of the bisque. So not bisque, let's do, you know what, I like that azure. But that looks fine. I'm going to change the one for the body to be black. By the way, the X for that would be 000, I believe. If I hover over it, yeah, that's black. So the body is set to the background color of black. The wrapper is set to the background color of azure. I showed you how to do that stuff with the wrapper, but I'm going to set it back to 960. Yes. It's a little distracting. All right, let me save all that stuff. And if we're lucky, I can screenshot it to you. Okay, we've got a new problem with the wrapper. I just need to center it. That's going to drive me crazy. But I think this is looking good other than that. Let's see, here we go. Screen share, brackets. Hey, I'm getting faster. Okay, so we have a position, a width on this. You know what, I'm just going to change this to static. I think that'll solve our problem. It's like we're trying to get our page to do too much, you know. Let's see if that helps. No. Oh, that's, you know what I forgot is we moved our header out of the wrapper, and that's why it's doing that. So it would go right here. Everybody see what I was talking about? Here's like our wrapper div, and it looks like it's sitting on top of something, like it's just black. I'm going to quickly fix a couple of things, and then I'll stop talking about this. I've kind of been babbling for a while. I mean, hopefully it's useful to you all, but I haven't gotten any questions that I can tell. I'll check again in a second. Okay, so in the HTML, I need to move my header. Oh, goodness. Let me cut that and paste it back inside wrapper. Save that. The other thing I wanted to do is in the style sheet, I have this thing set to a background of orange. I'm going to change that to RGBA of 255, 155, 0, 0.8. So it's going to be a tiny bit see-through. It's not going to make that big of a difference, but it will be see-through to that azure color, I would think. The other thing I want to do is change the background color from 000 to 333, which is that gray we talked about earlier. Okay. Force a refresh. Well, you know, I still got that padding top going on here, so there's a big space, but I like that background color. I like all the colors on here. Again, I still see things I would need to tweak to fix this. The image looks like it is hanging out of our header. That's new. Didn't see that before. Let's see, we could fix that without resizing the image. But before I do, let me check and see if there are any other questions. Nope, I'm not seeing any other questions. If anybody has any other questions, go ahead and fire them up. Now is a good time. It's 12:30. Let's see, we're down to 3 viewers. That's great. Again, I commend you all for doing this. Man, it's a lot better than going to campus. Can you imagine? That's like a war zone out there. It's horrible. All right, so I was going to try to fix that picture. I don't know exactly what's wrong with it. But instead of fixing this, instead of switching views back to brackets, I'm going to do the inspect thing here. Let's see if I can mess around with this here. Show y'all really how to use it. So here's my header. Here's my image on it. It's told to float right. It doesn't have any other info on it. It has a max width. What if I said max height auto? Is that a thing? Well, no, that didn't work. So let's change that to height auto. Does that do anything? No, that didn't do it either. All right, so I'll just turn that off. Let me check the header. Are there any rules on the header that are making it act funny? No, I'm not seeing anything. I can show you all a new rule that we could add that would cut everything off that hangs out of, in this case, the header. That would be overflow hidden. So if some content overflows, in this case the header, by adding this rule, it'll hide there. Then we're not going to see it. So that's kind of cool. Yeah, and I'm fine with that. All right. Again, this page is still a little messed up, but it's a good start. So going back to the blog, just so I have a start point of things to talk about. As a reminder, I really want everyone to reference this rubric before handing your content in. Beyond that, I want to say, if you show your resume to anybody else, including like your mom or your uncle or your roommate, which would probably be easier, we'll give you feedback, and that's going to be the same feedback that I would probably give you. But yeah, make sure you follow through on this. Otherwise, you'll give me an excuse to take some points off. I also want to point out that make sure you link everything. I've already mentioned that, but make sure you also link everything so it opens in a new window. Don't forget your Google font. That's an easy, unnecessary way for me to take off points. And please remember a page title. So if any of you are wrestling with fixed headers, fixed sidebars, we didn't get a chance to make a sidebar in class. So I do have this blog post that will summarize how to do it. The way I do it in here, just so you know, is with an aside. And aside is one of those replacements for the div tag that I explained. This is CSS for it. So you'd follow along with that if you wanted. Let's see, I think here's another, that's that summary on floats. If you're having trouble with your media query, this is a good quick summary. And I think I had, just to go to the second page here, I think we had one other thing that I wanted to show y'all. Maybe not. I thought I had a video on here, but I'm not seeing it. Okay, so it looks like we got a new question. Let's go ahead and answer that. Okay, let's see. Okay, so Delaney is saying that she's trying to link to her social media account, and when she does, she's getting an error that you don't have access to this page. So that seems odd. I don't know what account she's trying to link to. But here's how I normally do this. Here, I'm going to switch my screen share to the browser and go to my Twitter page. So this would be the URL for my Twitter page that I would create a link to, and I would just pop that in. It could be if you were trying to create a link like to a specific Facebook page, you might run into an issue with that. I think the reason there is that Facebook likes to link to pages, but pages are for like stores or bands or things. They're not for people. But let's see. Link to my, let's see, I'll phrase this as HTML link to my Facebook page. Ooh, that's kind of weird. Let's see. Yeah, people are doing this in a really kind of weird way. So let's check here on Stack Overflow and see if this works. Like box, badges, subscribe, yeah. So, I mean, here's the basics. You plug in your username there. So I don't know if that's going to work, but I'll try mine. I think mine is Facebook. By the way, y'all, I don't use Facebook anymore. I gave up about 2 years, so don't Facebook me. Let me log in. So this is the URL for my Facebook page. No. It's facebook.com/BrianPatrickWalsh. So let me copy that. I'm going to try to do what, I mean, again, I don't know what Delaney is trying to link to, but I'm guessing it's not Twitter. You can link directly to Twitter pages. It shouldn't cause any problems. Oh, y'all are looking at something real weird, aren't you? Let me stop that. Okay, so I figured out my URL. Let me make sure brackets is ready to rock. I'm going to try to do this. So let's do screen share. I'm going to switch over here. By the way, Jordan, I saw your question. I'll answer it in a second, just via email. All right, so we'll do all this in the HTML. Let's see. So here's my, oh, I linked all this stuff to the same thing. Let's say this is my Facebook link. So I'll write Facebook and then comment that out so it's just clear to me. And let's say this one, I'll just pretend is Twitter. All right. I'm so sick of this cough, y'all. So my URL would be HTTP. Let's see if it was HTTP or HTTPS. I guess we can check. I'm not seeing it. You know, either one should work. I'm going to do HTTP because S is for a secure connection, which I'm not providing. So this would be www.facebook.com/BrianPatrickWalsh. Target equals blank. Okay. Let's see if it works. So I'll save it. Hit live preview. And try to share that with you. Besides this one, share. There we go. I plugged in the Twitter account. Here's the second one. That's just a link to my URL. When I click on it, it opens up a new window, and it does open up my page. Now, I want to point something out. I'm logged into Facebook right now, and that's why this connection works. So if you try to click on it and it doesn't work, if you type in facebook.com and it asks you to log in, then that's the problem. That is, Facebook will not allow you to directly access a page that is not public, even if you have the exact URL, unless you're logged into Facebook. Again, it depends on the page. Let me see what Delaney says and see. Oh, that's an interesting question. So Delaney's asking about private accounts on Twitter. In case y'all don't know, a private account means that someone, I'll close my Facebook. A private account means that, well, you already probably know this, but it means that people can only see your Twitter posts if they are invited, I guess. So what would happen is if you put a link to your Twitter page on your resume and someone clicked on it that had not been invited, which is probably what the case would be, it's still going to come up with Twitter. It'll show it won't show your tweets, but it'll show your username and your avatar, and there it'll say, this is a private account, you need to be invited to it. So my recommendation would be not, if you have a private Twitter account, don't put that on your resume, because there's a 99% chance that someone that's looking at your resume to hire you will not be invited to your private Twitter account. So I would say just leave it out. If that feels wrong or irresponsible to you, I would encourage you to try to create a second Twitter account connected to a different email address that is public. I don't think there's anything wrong with having a private Twitter account. That's probably a good idea, but it might be a good idea to have a public one as well. That's a little more than is worth doing, for our assignment. So when you worry about that, the next day or two, but in general, I would encourage you to do that. All right, so Jordan's actually asking me if I can help him with his resume, which is mostly responsive. He wants to make sure it's all the way responsive. And I kind of could give, I'm assuming Jordan's okay with this, which I assume he is. I could try to debug it and see if we can fix that. So Jordan, if this ticks you off, then you can throw something at me next time you see me, but I'm gonna share a screen with your resume in its mini version. So here it is in mini version. Okay, so here, we're going wide. By the way, this is not his resume. His resume is down here. He's still working on it. But if we make it all the way small, can everybody see? I've got a scroll bar. We've got it at the bottom. It's just a little bit. It's a little wiggle. So let's see if we can debug what that is. When I look initially, it looks to me like the header is fitting in pretty well. I am noticing that there's some content here that looks like it's falling out of the probably the wrapper. Oh, okay. So you know what, Jordan? This might be a really easy fix. I know you just plugged in the gibberish here, but you have really long gibberish words, like this one. HTML does not know how to do a page break or a line break when you have a continuous word like that. It doesn't know where to break the word, and it's not going to do it automatically. And as a result, that actually alone can make your page unresponsive. So if you were to fix that, that would probably fix your responsiveness issue. That said, let me take a quick look by doing inspect, and I'm interested to see if this inspect window pops up so y'all can see it too. No. So that's too bad. Let me see if I can share it. I mean, I'm sure I can. Here, so here's the inspect window on Jordan's resume. Again, I didn't see anything, horrible or anything, but I can see in the media query, Jordan, you've got your wrapper to a width of 100, and I think that's going to be too big. So I'm going to bring that down to 94. Now, again, that's not going to save with your project or anything. This is just in this version that I have open in the browser. That might help. Meow, meow, meow. Let's see. I'm just clicking through here to make sure there's nothing else that's setting widths that are funky. Good job adjusting the padding there on your H2 tags in the media query. Check this div. Yeah, so this seems to be, I really think that your primary problems would be that you set your media query to wrapper width of 100%, bring that down to 90 something. And then your gibberish text that you plugged into your body, I would put some spaces in it. So again, this, I wonder if I can do it here. Yeah, I can force some spaces in here. Kind of have to guess, but my hope is that after I do this stuff, we will switch back over to the browser and take a quick view, and your page will be responsive. To answer your initial question, I'd say your page, yeah, was mostly responsive, but we don't want our page to be mostly responsive. We want it to be all the way responsive, just no scroll bar. And again, I'm only testing in Chrome on a small browser here. The way we really test this, and the way, frankly, I've done it in the past, is on a phone. So I'm kind of going easy on y'all. But really, that's just because due to time constraints. All right, a lot of gibberish in here. Almost done. I think. Okay, a little more. As a reminder, the name of that gibberish that we use, that most web designers use, is lorem ipsum. So I want to try that instead of typing random characters. But then again, I'm kind of hypocritical in what I'm saying because I often dribble out a bunch of random characters as well. Okay, this page is totally responsive now. That is, when I scroll back and forth, it'll move a little bit. Like you can see it's like bending out, but it's just going to snap back. Again, that's based on a phone's behavior. That didn't used to happen in browsers. It does now. And you can see that that text that was hanging out here is no longer hanging out. Now that said, remember we adjusted the width of your wrapper to what, 90%? And while that solved the problem, you can now see that your content is not centered in the media query. So we would want to add an additional rule. You may know what that rule is. Again, I'm just going to do this in the inspector, but margin 0 auto I'm going to add that in the media query. And you can see that centers everything. So Jordan, those 3 steps should fix your problems with your page, bring the width in the media query down to 90 something. I did 90, work fine. For your gibberish, add spaces in your gibberish, or replace it with your real content when you're ready. And add margin 0 auto to your wrapper. You might want to add it to the desktop version, but you definitely want to add it to the media query. I think it's harder for me to keep track of my thoughts this way than it is in class, because I'm like running this show while I'm doing this stuff, so it's a little difficult for me. All right, let me check my email and see if anybody else has asked some stuff. Okay, so I don't see any additional questions yet. If y'all have any, we got 10 minutes left on here. So I'll say some important things in the meantime. Again, there's only 3 of you watching, so I don't think I'm breaking too many hearts here. But what I want to say is this is not the only help I'm providing, obviously. Hopefully this has been a little bit helpful for those of you that have been watching. But I assume you're going to continue to work on this project throughout the weekend. My recommendation for getting help from me would be trying to get that help today and tomorrow. Sunday is going to be really hard for me to help y'all with, because my parents are coming to visit our kids. I mean, I'm just going to be out with the kids all day, and most of the night probably. I don't even know if my parents will make it because of our beautiful weather, but regardless, we've got these plans set. So I'll have my phone with me. So I can see y'all's emails, but I won't be able to respond in a timely fashion at all on Sunday. So if you need help, you can get that help today or tomorrow. I will not be as quick as I am during the week. Well, today I'll be, okay. Tomorrow I'll be less good. Our kids are all trapped in our house with us, so as we're being iced in, there's no school, there's no nothing, there's no help. So just me and my wife, and again, we have 3 little ones. So we're busy. But I can always slip away and check my email. It's just my response time will be a little slower than normal. On Monday morning, I'm definitely going to be available. In fact, what I'm planning on doing is I get up earlier than y'all, so don't worry about that. But I'll try to get on email and respond to any questions that had come in the night before. And if y'all are working on this kind of last minute on Monday morning, I can try to help you. Hopefully, you're not going to ask questions Monday morning like, what does it mean to be responsive or something like that. It's really last minute there, but like little things like I can't move this text over, my image isn't responsive. We can totally debug that stuff. As we talked about in class before, if you upload your content to the server and send me a link and say, why can't I get XYZ to work? I can answer your question in 1 email, guaranteed. Well, unless your question is like, all the things aren't working with the stuff, then you know what I mean. But yeah, if you actually upload your project, even if it's not done, and say, this isn't working, help me fix it. I will help you fix it. I'm not going to count that as your submission of your final project. I'm going to help you with that one project. And it's much easier that way than if you just send me an email and say, my page isn't responsive, or this isn't working. So that's all fine. Working on the project Monday morning is fine. This is due Monday at noon. I picked noon because that's when our class time is. Now, I want to remind everybody of something, well, all 3 of you of something, which is that the primary problem we've had in this class, I know I said this too much, is uploading our content and getting me a link. So if that's what you're doing in the last 3 hours before this project is due on Monday at noon, that might be a little scary. If you've had problems with that on, say, the last project, it might be scary trying to figure that out right before your final project where 40% of your grade is due. I also want to remind everyone, you can finish this like now and send it to me. I've always made this an option. I've always had students that submit the resume like 3 days before it's actually due. Not for feedback, but here you go, I'm done with my final project, high five, goodbye. I think that's fine. Again, I understand y'all are probably pretty busy with your COM210 final projects. So if you want to just get this off your plate, that's fine. And I think that's a good idea. All right, well, that's all my spiel I wanted to say. Let me just check and see if anybody is, no, I haven't gotten any comments. I don't know, I tried to enable this Q&A thing and it says this feature is disabled. I'm not entirely sure why, because I thought I enabled it, but I was getting emails from y'all when you were, I guess, asking questions. They were just popping up in the email, which was open right next door to this window you're looking at. So I think this worked pretty well, considering. So again, if you need help, I won't do it as a Google Hangout, but it's good. Thanks for being my guinea pig so we know that this works. If you have specific questions beyond this, email me, and I'll answer it. And if anybody has a question that I think would apply to everyone, would be useful, or if I just think of anything that would be useful to everybody, I will send the class an email. And if it was necessary, I would create work and put it on the server and even attach it as a zip file to that email if necessary. Again, y'all have, we drench you in resources. You have more resources than you need. That's a good problem. That's the idea. We want to make your, we want to put you in a situation where you can try to solve your own problems, you know, ideally. And I realize this is an intro class and it's kind of hard, but by the end of the class, a lot of you are doing that now. I mean, even yesterday in class, you were asking questions and you'd answered before I managed to. Oh, I do see you got a new question. Let me see. Excellent question, Zach. My go-to order when I order pizza is ham and feta cheese. I'm also willing to go prosciutto. Because there are no prosciutto is a fancy thin sliced Italian ham, pretty yummy. It usually costs more if they have itemized toppings. But my slice preference comes from an old place called Pepper's Pizza. That was the go-to pizza place here in Chapel Hill, and which closed 2 years ago, which is really too bad, but I was always going to get a slice of ham and feta. My children love bacon on their pizza, mostly because they just love bacon. I think that's because as humans, we are wired to eat bacon. All right, well, I think that's a good send-off on this. If y'all have questions beyond this, whether or not they relate to HTML, CSS, or pizza toppings, feel free to get in touch. Zach, I'm guessing you just wanted to like contribute, you know, like other people are asking, you're like, I gotta ask a question before this is over. I appreciate it. I appreciate all y'all logging in and trying this out with me. And again, thank goodness we're not on campus. Don't go to campus, it sounds like a nightmare. All right, so I'm going away. Again, if you have questions beyond this, send me an email, bwalsh5. Thanks, y'all. I'm really looking forward to your resumes. And I think this has been a really good class. I'm really bummed out we didn't get to do the, what do you call it, teacher evaluations. So that's a loss for me rather than for you. But what are you going to do, right? I mean, we didn't have time. So things happen. All right, well, there's something for you to worry about. All right, y'all. Well, I'll see you on campus if I don't see you. Well, I guess I'll just see you around campus, or not at all. One or the other. Exciting. All right, enjoy the snow. Be safe.